Here are 5 people first change management strategies that I've used just as often on my personal growth journey as I have working with communities. People first change management, if you're new here, is a change management approach that prioritizes the really human side of it. I also call this embodied change management because change needs to be embodied if we want it to be sustainable and real. And this is true whether you're a person trying to make a change in your life, trying to work towards a vision that you have, or if you're in an organization or on a team or in a company or in a community and you're trying to bring change into those collective spaces. Every single one of us has a role to play in bringing change into the world. And that is exactly why I offer embodied change management tools and resources for people like me and like you, and for those bigger collective spaces. Before we jump in, my name's Danielle. My mission is to help people deepen their connections to self, to others, and to the environment, because it is through our connections that we can transform. Now, if you want to learn more about that, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can see more weekly leadership development updates, change management tools and tips, and other ways that we can work towards this personal growth and transformation. All right, without further ado, let's talk about how embodied people-first change management can be harnessed in 5 simple ways for every single one of us, regardless of what role we have, regardless of where we're at in our life's journey, and really regardless of any other aspect of our life. We all have a role, as I said, to play in change, and therefore we each have the opportunity to choose to change in a way that is more conscious, more aligned, and more integrous with the kind of person we want to be. The first lesson we'll actually touch on is the fact that there is this tendency to resist change. But when we resist change, we atrophy. Our capacity for change and our capacity to be resilient through change and transformation starts to diminish. Like any other muscle, we need to practice embracing transformation and change. And this can be in very, very small ways. It can be introducing yourselves to new foods, for example, or it can be in very, very big ways. How do we actually transition, for example, our community center from fossil fuels to more eco-friendly options? Those are 2 broad examples. They may resonate with you, they may not. Either is okay. The point is that we need to practice change. And every area of our life can be an opportunity for practice. This isn't to say we need to transform every single area of our life constantly. That's not going to work for a lot of us. We need some sort of consistency and stability in order to feel safe enough to make the changes that actually matter. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that the world is constantly changing. We cannot ignore the fact that new events happen every day, that the seasons are changing, that the weather is going to change. We cannot ignore the macro system and the cycles that we are a part of. The people who do atrophy, which is a nicer way of saying they get stuck in these old paradigms or these old beliefs or these old ways of seeing the world. And when you're stuck there, you're going to be more and more frightened of the new things that are emerging. And while, yes, there is an element of wisdom that comes with not adopting new technologies or patterns or practices immediately, to resist them entirely without being willing to educate yourself or learn about the people bringing them in is not going to help you, and it's not going to help anyone else. We're seeing this very, very vividly right now in the world because there's so much change happening on a global scale. We can look towards the people who are resisting it, and we can look and see the impact of that stress and that aggression and that fear on them and how they engage with the world. Now, I myself do try to move from a place of compassion for every single person, whether I agree with their beliefs or not. However, it does have to come with an element of awareness that just because I can have compassion for someone, I don't have to condone their aggression or cruelty towards people they perceive as different from themselves. And often that aggression and cruelty emerges as a threat response, as a fear response to something unfamiliar, to something that threatens their old perceptions of the world. But the perceptions are of a world that does not actually exist anymore. When we do not take the time to consciously choose the kind of changes we want to see, we're going to be more and more afraid of any change. So if you're watching this video, I really encourage you to choose one place to practice. Maybe you are, again, on that personal growth journey and you want to start expanding your comfort zone. And I applaud you for that because that is a huge step. I know I was there at one point, and it was by making that choice to expand my comfort zone that I'm even here in front of you today. So if that's you, pick one place in your life to go somewhere new, try something new, or even practice a skill that forces you outside of your comfort zone because it's not easy for you. All too often, we associate discomfort with fear, and the reality is change is always going to be uncomfortable. So if we don't get used to the fact that discomfort is a part of life and not something to be scared of, we're going to be constantly living from a state of fear. And that is the first embodied change management principle that I will offer anyone, is that we need to get used to discomfort, because when we're used to discomfort, we can begin to tell the difference between something that feels uncomfortable and different and new and something that's actually a threat. Because if we don't do that work, if we don't get used to discomfort, we're going to perceive it as a threat when it's not. And that is what keeps us stalled personally, and it's what keeps us stalled collectively. Now, the second change management principle that I would really love to offer you is the fact that change is going to come in layers. It doesn't happen all at once. We know this. We can make a decision to try something new, and that doesn't mean, in every case at least, that we're trying that new thing that day. Sometimes it's an aspect of just being willing to try something new, or allowing new things to enter our perception, allowing our routine to be changed by the traffic jam or by the opportunity shared by a coworker. The layers of change are really, really interesting because I see them in 4 general layers. I often perceive this sort of energetic openness to change first within myself. And once that happens, I begin to get ideas of how I can change, or ideas for what might need to change in my business or in my self-care practice or in how I relate to people or how I engage with my community. The ideas then begin to encounter emotions for me, because often there are times where I'm still scared or nervous, or maybe I have to work through some anger to be able to do something. Maybe I have to work through some judgment, but there's an emotional element to change as well. And once I work through the emotional layer, then I find it's easier for me to actually take that physical action. Now, it is worth saying that yes, there are these layers. Yes, there are probably layers I'm not talking about. Yes, the layers are going to happen in different orders all the time. Sometimes we do the thing, and then we have to work through the rest of the things to figure out, okay, did that actually integrate? Was that right for us? And is it aligned with my values? And asking all these other questions, right? So not only is change moving through us in layers, but it's constant, it's iterative. It's going to feel at times like we've changed, but we're also back at the same lesson. And that's because we're meeting that lesson from a new place ourselves. And the really beautiful part about that, when we can start to embed ourselves and root into this perception of curiosity and engagement with change, is our opportunities and capacity for growth are truly endless. So I really, really hope that anyone who's like, ooh, okay, yeah, that makes sense, I really hope you can start to root into that curiosity so that you can expand that capacity. If you would like more resources for how to expand that capacity, how to engage with change in this way, I am opening up soon, not yet, my video course called A Practice in Being. The definition might change, or the title might change yet, but the link for that, the wait list for that, is going to be included below. So go throw your name on that wait list if you're interested in learning how that course can help you. Now, what is the third lesson that embodied change management offers us? The third lesson is that change, as much as we might wish we can force it through, it does not happen through domination. It can, and it has in the past. We can look at colonization, for example, or the patterns of capitalism. And yes, they dominated through force, through money, to make change happen. But the changes that we're experiencing now personally and collectively aren't through that pattern, because that's now an old pattern, right? That domination isn't change, it's the norm. So the changes that we are beginning to implement now need to happen through softness. And that softness doesn't have to look like something flimsy. That softness is a persistence and a belief and a compassion and a self-worth that is rooted from in a very, very, very deep place. So do not mistake softness for weakness. But when we begin to engage with change from this softness instead of from domination or force, something pretty incredible happens, because we begin to find that when we're soft with ourselves, when we're compassionate with ourselves, or when we're soft and compassionate with other people, we feel safer. And when we feel safer, the discomfort of change does not feel like a threat. Remember that first point, how I said oftentimes change is perceived as a threat because it is uncomfortable. When we move through softness instead of domination, it's no longer a threat. It's actually an opportunity to rewire our nervous systems, to regulate our nervous systems, and to meet that new pattern from a place of openness. And I really don't think that can be understated. I know for myself, in my personal growth journey, I had to learn how to be soft with myself, because I had all this programming and all these old patterns in my life telling me that I could succeed and I could thrive and I could get all the external validation in the world by forcing myself to do the thing. But it was actually by forcing myself to do the thing for 2 decades that I reached a point of burnout where it stopped working. And when I was in that point of burnout, again, the change, the evolution, the transformation had to happen through softness. And now, yes, I need to have that firmness to make sure I follow through on the things that I care to follow through on, for example. But at the same time, on the days where I know that's not happening because I need to rest, because I need to calm my mind or ground my energy, the softness comes back in, because the softness recognizes that my capacity for change is going to be a lot more potent if I let myself rest and connect and ground my energy once again. Because when our nervous systems are regulated, we can be far more intentional with our actions. That is 3. I I had 5 written down. I'm trying to remember them all here. I should have had my notebook beside me, but I don't. The 4th lesson that embodied change management offers every single one of us is that how we implement a change is just as important as the end goal that we're trying to reach. Let me rephrase that for those who like to have a couple different ways of looking at things. The vision that we have, the goal, the success story is important, yes. But it is our choices and actions every single day that get us to that goal that matter just as much, if not more, arguably. A third way of saying it, it's about the journey, not the destination. Now, why? Why does this matter? Why does this make embodied change management different from the logic models and the strategic plans that are so common nowadays? It is because through our actions, our smallest actions every single day, that we actually begin to practice the values that we need to have in order to make that vision truly a part of our reality. For example, if we're working towards social equity or to further anti-racism or improve acceptance and safety of marginalized peoples in our society, we need to really practice rooting into curiosity about difference, rooting into practices of listening and valuing other people's perspectives, even if they're different from our own. We need to practice interrogating our own shadows and our own wounds that we bring into these conversations. And we really, really, really need to practice more softness and self-forgiveness for when we do mess up. We need to practice new ways of resolving conflict, and we need to practice new ways of perceiving the social inequities that are around us so that we can get to the root issues. This is important because if we don't build those skills in small ways on this journey, even if that vision or that goal appeared like that tomorrow, we wouldn't be able to sustain it. Because if we haven't done the internal work to grow and to learn and to expand, then we don't have those muscles. We won't be able to hold it. We're going to fall back on old programming or old values when things go sideways because that old programming, those old values feel familiar and therefore they feel safer than something that's new and different, even though that new and different thing is objectively better for everybody. And this is exactly why it is really important to bring a level of awareness and curiosity about the values we're using to guide our actions every single day. And if you're interested in doing that work, that is where my value identification and exploration workbook comes in. You can find that also in the show notes below. The final, I know everybody's been waiting for this, the final change management strategy that I would recommend to anyone, whether you're working in a community, you're in an office space, or you're just trying to expand your own capacity in your own life. And that is that if you're trying and you're trying and you're trying and a change just isn't happening, you can't actually follow through on the workout plan, for example, or on the switching to a new paper company or any of these changes that are really difficult. For example, maybe you're in an office and to improve employee satisfaction, you're trying to have weekly meetings, but everybody's busy every time, every week, and none have happened. It's really hard to follow through on the goals that you've set. This is when we have an opportunity for reflection, because the fault is not because we're not worthy of the change. The fault is not that we're incapable of making it happen. The fault is not that the change doesn't matter. We need to be reflective about our capacity for that change, and just as we need to pay attention to our actions every single day because they help us reach the vision that we have, If we can't reach that vision that we have, we need to go and look back at those actions. Because if we have a goal and we for some reason cannot act towards that goal, there's usually some sort of value getting in the way. Now, for example, going to the idea of you want to improve team satisfaction or cohesion in your workplace, but having that weekly meeting just isn't happening. That could be because there is a value conflict where people are still prioritizing their work, what's the word I'm looking for? Their productivity over the social relationships. Or maybe they're not understanding the intention behind the team building. Because if it is that surface level, we're trying to appease people, which is how often can be perceived, why would they prioritize that over just getting their work done and clocking out early? This is an important aspect to consider because when we look at broader social issues, for example, talking about social equity or anti-racism, someone might say they're anti-racist, but they're continuing to perpetuate in very subtle ways through microaggressions or other aspects. They might perpetuate racism because there are certain values they need to look at. And this is the opportunity here when you get to this point, because we all get to this point at some point. It's definitely happened to me. When we get to this point, when we're aware that we have a value that we're prioritizing that's blocking us from our vision, we need to reflect on that. We need to explore where that value came from, what it's rooted in, and we need to actively choose whether we care more about our vision or our goal or our priorities. That's that success story that we want. We need to decide if we care more about that or the value that's holding us back. Because not every value that we have, not every value that we make choices from or that we prioritize is actually authentic to us or authentic to the world that we want to build. And if we continually find that, oh man, a peaceful world would be really, really awesome, but we cannot show up in conflict from a grounded and integrous place, then we need to start looking at what's stopping us from showing up in conflict in that way. Because if we're perpetuating cycles of drama or gossip or aggression, it's not going to help make that peaceful world a reality, right? And this really takes, and this is why regardless of if you're part of a team or part of a community, or you're just coming from a personal growth perspective, this aspect of people first change management is something every single one of us is responsible for. Because if we do not each take responsibility for the ways that our unconscious values or the values that have been enculturated into us, that we have been indoctrinated to prioritize, if we have not reflected on them, and if we have not consciously chosen values that actually reflect the life we want to live, then we are going to continuously hold ourselves back from the goals that we have, even if our goals are the most amazing things in the world. The Value Identification and Exploration Workbook also helps you through that kind of self-reflection process. Again, it's very much based in my personal journey and the ways that I had to reflect on my values in order to start on the path that I'm walking now. And I say that because I'm nowhere near done and I would not pretend otherwise. But I offer this to you because when I created People First Change Management or Embodied Change Management, it is very much rooted in my personal growth journey. It's very much rooted in how I became someone who had the capacity for community engagement, to run a business, to show up in more engaged ways with my family. I didn't have those skills or that capacity a couple of years ago. Couple of years ago, all I really wanted to do was hide under my blankets and sleep all day. I had to through softness, through honesty, through building up my tools for nervous system regulation, and through learning that discomfort is not the same thing as being threatened. Through looking at my values, I had to go through those journeys, through those pathways, in order to become someone who is capable of doing the scary things like starting a business, like marketing myself, like recording myself for YouTube videos, like networking and cold emailing and all those things. It took time, which is why the softness matters too, because when we're soft, like water, we can actually stay more resilient and persistent in the long term. And that is what creates sustainable change. And it's sustainable change that I offer through my services as a community mentor for people who are hearing this video and would like someone to walk with them on this path in their community, their team, or their organization. My name is Danielle. My mission, as I said at the start, is to help people deepen their connections to self, to others, and to the environment so that we can drive collective transformation. If you would like to learn more about that, about leadership development through this lens, about people first change management, or about more tools for emotional regulation or nervous system regulation, then hit that subscribe button below, like this video, and tell me your thoughts. Tell me what helped, what didn't, or what else you would like to know. What else you would like to know about people first change management. Let's make your story a vibrant one.